Hey everybody, my name is Matt Pierce, Learning and Video Ambassador for Techsmith Corporation. Welcome to the Visual Lounge. We're so glad that you're joining us, whether you're live or you're listening to the podcast or watching the video later. We're grateful that you're here with us. We have another great episode for you today. We are going to be talking with Betty Dannewitz of If You Ask Betty and so much more. She is so fantastic, and we'll get to that just in a second. I do want to say that if you are watching, we'd love to have your participation in, liking, subscribing, rating us on iTunes or wherever you're listening to this, because that helps us to know that this is meaningful content to you, and it helps us to continue to move forward and make content. You inspire us, basically. So definitely do that. Now, with that said and out of the way, because we want to get to the good stuff today, let me introduce our guest today. So just about a year ago, I met Betty on the way from a conference from Detroit to San Jose, California. Remember when we could travel? Wasn't that those good times? And I had the good fortune of sharing a car with her where we rode over to the conference center together. And, I really got to be able to meet If You Ask Betty. And, Betty is one of those people who I knew from the gate was motivated and want to make a difference in the world, especially in learning and development. And I can tell you, she is talented, resourceful, but maybe even more important, she is kind and compassionate. And on more than one occasion, I've received an encouraging message, or she's reached out and asked, just how are things going? I mean, she is really the real deal. And like I said, she's driven and motivated to share, create, and help. She runs the If You Ask Betty podcast, which we'll put links in the chat for you guys, where she talks about learning and development topics, and occasionally she'll have me on even to talk about Dungeons and Dragons and, maybe drop an accent or two. So she also happens to be an associate learning solutions architect for Ken Blanchards Companies. So please help me welcome, If You Ask Betty, Betty Dannewitz to the Visual Lounge. Hey, Betty.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thanks, Matt. I'm so excited to be here. And you told like the nicest part of our story meeting. You should tell the rest of it.
Well, I thought you always tell the nicest part, especially when someone's your guest. So
You didn't tell the part about how I totally fangirled you on the plane. And I was like, oh, I know you.
No one, you know what? No one needs to know. No one, everyone knows me.
Everyone
They get
knows
to
now.
see my face right now.
Everyone knows now. Yeah.
We're
cool.
all friends. So, Betty, thank you so much for being here. And, I mean every word of what I said. You've been so kind to reach out. And one of the things I like, and we haven't really had too many opportunities to talk about, is using media. And because I know you're into some kind of looking at, I don't even want to call it future tech, because that seems like really big, but like AR, VR stuff. And obviously you're a talented instructional designer, training creator. But before we get into all that, tell us a little bit more about yourself and what should our audience know about you that I haven't already said?
Sure. So I am from the Detroit area, and I've lived here most of my life. And I've been in learning and development for almost 18 years. In fact, I think in July it'll be 18 years. And I feel like we should have a party or something, because it's like my career as an adult. So I don't know. I feel like something should be done. And, I have a deep rooted personal mission, and that is to help people become better humans. And I strongly, strongly believe that innovative technology is a huge part of that. And that includes augmented reality, virtual reality, podcasting is even considered and should be considered an innovative technology. There are so many different ways that we can help people become better. And I think in learning and delivery, really, that's an undercurrent that we have. So that's a little bit more about me.
Yeah, I love it. And I love this idea about making better humans because, I think you're off to a good start. I know just your conversations with me, it's always just a nice uplifting moment of my day when I get a message like, hey, how you doing? Because I know it's not just you want something, you're genuinely asking, which is so important. But let's talk about the conversation we're here to talk about today, which is we've talked about today's title of the episode is like, how to decide which media to use for instruction. And I think that becomes, I think we probably need to start with what media do we mean, or what do we mean by media? Because, I, being from Techsmith, tend to categorize media, and I go right to images and video, which isn't bad, but there's a whole world of media out there. What other types of media would you kind of put in your list of go-tos?
So images and video. I would even throw in GIFs, which are like caught between image and video. They're like images as a teenager. I don't know why I make everything about a life cycle, but nevertheless, I don't know. I would throw podcasting in there. I would say, immersive, any type of immersive learning. I would also say like e-learning, or what we know as e-learning. So things that are created by Storyline or Captivate or even Rise are forms of media. And then also, like, let's not forget social media, because it's in the name, right? So
Right.
any type of social type of media, and then, classroom posters. Like, remember when we used to like go places and do things together, and there was like a poster on the wall? Like, that's media. So I think anything that you can see or experience is pretty much media.
Well, and I love that you broadened that out. I think we're not trying to make it a formal definition of media here, but I love that you included the experience piece of that, because that does seem like a really important piece, right? Like, I want you to be able to experience this. I want you to see it. I want it to, media maybe media is not even the right word for what we're talking about, but it does seem like an important piece. So let's talk about this. Okay, so we've got all these different types of media that we could choose from. How do you, like, when you're starting a project, how do you, like, I know that's not the first thing you do, or we shouldn't do. I hope you're not first choosing your media. So how do you get to that point? Like, what has to happen so you can decide what is the best or the most appropriate media?
So you got to start by, at least I do, meeting with the stakeholders and asking lots and lots of questions. If you've known me for 5 minutes, you know that I like to ask questions. And I have no issues with that. And in fact, I was one of my first bosses in learning and development. The first year for Christmas, she bought me the little book of big questions. And I was like, why are you buying me this? She's like, because you really like to ask questions. And I was like, I do, which is also a question. So I love to ask questions. And that's what you need to do. Asking questions like, and I always start with some of the basics: the who, what, where, when, why. And so who are we trying to target, and what is it that you want them to do when they're done with this? Where are they going to take this learning in? Let's see, who, what, where, when do you want this to be done by? Why do you want it to be done by then? And why do you want them to do it to begin with? And then, what are you thinking is usually one of the questions I have. What are you thinking about how you might want us to deliver this? And I say that because I try to leave it open, that I want to hear what they have to say, but it may be that my expertise lends us to a different route, right? A different journey. But I want to hear what the client or whoever it is that I'm working with is thinking, because maybe they're thinking the same thing, or maybe they have a better idea than me. It's totally possible. So that's, hopefully that answered your question, but I just ask a lot of questions.
Yeah, no, I like that. I know there's traditionally, like, when we go to conferences and people are talking about learning development, there's usually a kind of an unspoken, there's a tension between subject matter experts, or SMEs, and the training creator, instructional designer. Like, oh, well, they're going to want something completely different. But I love that question at the end that you asked, that, what do you envision? Because it does seem like they might have interesting ideas that you didn't think of, or they might have a sense of what format, kind of process might lend itself to their audience, because they know their audience probably way better than you or I do. But I also can see where there's probably a lot of times when it's like, yeah, they want something, and you're like, no, that's not going to be the right one.
I usually don't say it out loud, but in my head, I'm like, probably not.
So we're going down this path. We've asked lots of questions. We're getting information, and that's going to obviously make a world of difference in terms of what decisions you make, right? If they tell you, kind of the requirements. Are there things that usually come up in your experiences that say, like, oh yeah, this would make sense as a podcast, or this would make sense as an image, kind of more image driven, or or this would make sense. Oh, gosh, it wouldn't be great if we had a video to do that, or is it really just super dependent upon, like, everything is always different, and you're going to make a decision based on all the information. You're always going to make a decision based on all the information. But you know what? Do you understand what I'm asking? I don't know if I do, but
I feel you. I totally get what you're saying. So typically in the answer to the why question and in the answer to the how do you envision it question is where sort of I pull information and decide what's this going to look like when we deliver it. So a couple of things come into play. One, knowing and understanding what's the history that of how they've rolled out training in the past. And a lot of times it's classroom or e-learning, classroom or e-learning, like that's it. That's all they've really done. That's not uncommon at all in the industry. And so there's thinking about that. And then, okay, what was the why? Why are they doing this? So if let's just do an example. So if they want the behavior to change when interacting with their customer, okay, so that's the why. We want their behavior to change to XYZ when interacting with the customer. So, okay, so we're talking about behavior change, which to me means I need to explain to the learner why it's important for them to do it this way, what it is I want them to do, and then give them a chance to practice it a lot. So thinking about that, I'm like, okay, so then what is it that we can do to tell them what, tell them why, and let them practice? But before we do that, I'm bringing in those thoughts and feelings around how the client actually wants it to roll, right? So what were they thinking? And so if they say, well, I saw this really cool, ABC thing. And I think about, okay, does that ABC thing meet any of those pieces there? The why we're doing it, what I want you to do, and here's how you practice. If it does, let's tie it in, right? If they recently saw an awesome course on Rise, right? That might be a great way for us to put the steps of what they need to do. So that takes care of the what. I just need to figure out how am I going to communicate the why and how am I going to let them practice. And often the why is nicely done in a delivery mode that doesn't require the individual to necessarily be in a certain place at a certain time. Because if you think about it, if you need to know and understand why something, more often than not, we'll send an email. I don't know about you, but I'm not very good at reading my email. Like I scan it. Anytime I share my screen on like a Zoom, people like gasp at the red number that's on my mailbox. And it doesn't bother me. Like it's not a trigger for me. Some people, they can't have any of those things those little red boxes don't bother me a bit. So my point is that I think a lot of people ignore email. But if they got a message from a leader through a podcast or even a quick pop-up video, they're going to pay more attention to that. Let me tell you why, because I know you were going to ask me why, weren't you?
I sure was.
Okay. So the reason they pay more attention to that is because outside of work, that's how they consume media. They listen to things, they watch things. It's very rarely that they're reading things. They're taking a quiz. They're scrolling through their feed looking for something that catches their eye, those types of things. So if we could kind of take that concept of this is how they consume media outside of work and bring it in, that's where you'll be able to find that spot to slip in those videos and podcasts and things like that.
No, I think it's a really interesting insight because I know it feels like you're right. Like I personally don't like having too many. I can have a few red bubbles on my email, but too many, it gets overwhelming. But I think you're right that people are ignoring a lot of this key information, and so you're trying to find novel ways, if you will, to inject that information or give them ways that they're used to that aren't going to feel overwhelming or all consuming. So I think that's a really interesting idea. So it sounds like you've got procedurally, you're going to pick media that's going to lend itself to the steps, but it sounds like you have some room to experiment with the why. And I know from a Techsmith perspective, like we will often try to preload meetings with, before you come to this meeting, watch this video. And so that way, when we get to the meeting that, would have taken an hour, we can spend a half an hour and we can just discuss or answer questions or, make a decision versus here's 30 minutes of delivery. And now we have to go into all the other stuff. So we're well prepped for it.
Yep. And it's the same idea, right? Is What can we give them that they can consume, that they'll want to consume before, to give them the context they need so that they can jump right into what they need to learn?
Yeah, makes total sense. So as you're doing this, you've probably worked with a lot of clients, a lot of different customers, and whether from your current job or past jobs, is there a media type that you find yourself, just as much as your clients might be going to, like, oh, I saw this cool thing, is there something cool that you're going to a lot that you're that's in your toolbox? Like, I'm going to pull this out. This is going to be this is what Betty's known for. Maybe it's a podcast, maybe it's the AR, augmented reality. What is it that you find yourself going to often in the well?
So in corporate, in the JOB, like professional job space, I love and am a complete sucker for a good animated video. And I love Beyond, love them. And here, let me tell you why. Because a lot of times, well, two things. One, everyone loves animation. I do not care what these people tell you. I don't like cartoons. They're lying to you. Everyone
Say
loves
it again
animation.
so we can hear it well on the recording.
They are lying to you. Like I'm telling you, everyone loves animation, hands down. So that's the first thing. Second thing is it is the most rapid video production tool that I have found, because you don't actually have to go out and shoot video. You write a script, you record a voiceover, and then you get to just create the images and create the scenery, and you don't have to go and find other people to go someplace, which is really hard right now, and congregate and take 2 and 3 and 7 takes, because people freak out when the camera turns on. So I love Beyond, but Beyond is not always the answer for everything, but it can definitely be a quick and rapid way to deliver micro learning, 3 to 5 minute bursts of information. I do love AR, and I think that AR, augmented reality, could be used much more broadly and widely, especially when curating content and resources for employees. The problem is that you start talking about it, and instantly the leaders think dollar signs. It's really cheap, super easy. So you have to get in there and kind of explain that to them, and the best way to explain it is to show it. So build a prototype and show them, and get that in there. But I would say animated videos and augmented reality are probably usually first on my mind. Podcasts are good, but again, podcasts are really good for pushing context and like leadership messaging. And so sometimes that doesn't always, like if you're trying to teach a bank teller how to balance their drawer, I don't know that a podcast is going to, unless you're going to tell them the history of banking, I'm not really sure what you're going to tell them in a podcast. It's going to help them build that skill. So.
Right. No, I love that. And, one thing that we've had Kevin Thorne on the Visual Lounge before, and he talks about obviously using comics and things like that. And he, it's interesting that he said everybody loves animation.
They do.
It's interesting that the phrase you use, they love animation. You didn't say they love cartoons, because cartoons is the thing. It seems like it will get it shot down pretty quickly, right? Like,
yeah, you have to say the word animation.
That's cartoons. We're not kids. We don't want to do cartoons. So very
cartoons
interesting.
Equals kids. So you gotta use the word animated.
Yeah. So as you've been going through and as you look at those things that you're doing a lot of, I want to make sure we get to some questions here in just a minute. So everyone that's listening right now, we're going to get to your question, Adam. We got a couple other questions, but I'm curious, Betty, you say like, just go make a prototype for AR. You just go make a cartoon. And we say this a lot, just go make your first video, right? What advice do you have for someone who's trying to branch out from just using text-based with maybe some light image-based kind of content? How do you go about learning some of these skills? Short of going just to the Techsmith Academy to learn about video, but what is it that you would recommend for someone to, like, if they want to learn, and we don't have to pick one particular medium, but if they want to learn about podcasting, or how do you go about doing that, and what would you recommend for someone else?
So the first thing I would say is you got to pay attention to what is already out there in front of you. Be very specific and deliberate to pay attention to marketing, pay attention to what it is that you're seeing when you scroll, like you're doom scrolling, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody here knows some doom scrolling. Okay. So you're doom scrolling. When you're doing that, like the things that catch your eye, when you're watching them, also look at what they actually are. So like if it's a video of a dog doing a crazy trick, or or a cat knocking something off of a table, which by the way, you know how many times I've watched a video of a cat knocking something off of a table, and it's absolutely hysterical every time. They're just like, whoop. And you know what? This is not something new. This is something that's been around as long as we've had cats and tables. But it catches our attention. So what is it about that? Is it the fact that it was moving? Is it the fact that they had something flash up on the screen? Was it a catchy title that caught your attention? Because the things that catch your attention are the things that will catch the attention of the people you're trying to deliver learning for. The way that you're consuming media is the way that they will be doing it as well. So that's the first thing, is pay attention to what you're paying attention to. And then follow folks on LinkedIn that are doing some of these things, and just, for the lack of better word, just sort of linger and lurk and stalk, if you can, research. I like to call it research. Do your research by watching what it is that they do, the things that they produce, and the response that they get from it. Because when you're scrolling up on LinkedIn and you see that little mini video that someone made about how to what 3 questions you should ask every podcast guest or something like that, and you notice that it has 475 likes, they've done something to catch people's attention. And so pay attention to what that is, and use the opportunity to connect with people and follow people that do the things you want to do.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Betty, you ready to take a few questions from
Sure.
the audience? Okay, so
Let's do it.
The first one comes from Adam. He's watching over on LinkedIn. Thanks, Adam, for tuning in. He says, everyone has a different research they cite on video length. When you use video, how long is too long for you to consider using it? So is there a max length that you say like, oh, now it's too long? What do you think?
For like any video, or we're talking micro learning?
I think let's start with any kind of video, just because then we can go into micro learning or short video learning.
Sure. My, what I have heard, the research I've read, and what I personally experience is at the 10-minute mark, I'm done as far as looking at it on this little device. Okay. See all those notifications? Doesn't bother me a bit. Anyways, like 10 minutes is a long time for me to look at this. If I'm going to watch something longer than that, I want to sit back in my recliner and watch it on the bigger screen. So 10 minutes, I think, is if you can get people past 10 minutes, you have really created something compelling and engaging, and that's awesome. As far as micro goes, I've heard 3 to 5 minutes. I'll repeat that because I do think that's a good length. But there is so much value in 1-minute videos and 90-second videos. Because think about, again, from a mobile device perspective, how long would you want to hold your phone up for an experience? And that's about 60 to 90 seconds. And then your arms get tired and you want to put so that's an engagement point that goes down.
I almost dropped my phone
You're
trying
like,
to. That's why I don't hold it very long. And so Betty, I mean, this is where I think Techsmith has done some of that research even, and I agree with you. I think the thing about 10 minutes, I love that instead of thinking about like even what content's like, what experience you're thinking about, the experience that you might be having on this device. And because we have research that shows that there are people who have preferences, and again, it's just preferences, so people could say whatever, that are for longer videos. But I think the trick with those, you said, is engagement. And I think you have to have content that merits that length, right? Like if you make a longer than 10-minute video and it doesn't need to be longer than 10 minutes, then you're just wasting time. And why would anyone want to watch that?
Right.
So I think that's really important. And I do like and also about the shorter videos, I think that's really interesting. I don't know if there's a length limit, what makes micro learning. I honestly, I'm going to be really bold here, so don't get offended, Betty. I don't care. If you make a 2-minute video and that works for your audience because you gave them the right context, it's relevant to their needs, it's solving a problem, it's helping them be a better human or a better worker or whatever it might be. 90 seconds, 2 minutes, I don't care. Like,
right.
But what you said is we have to grab their attention, we have to make it engaging. We can't just expect them to sit there and just take in anything we give them. We have to do our homework to make it good. So
Agreed.
good answers.
Well, thanks.
So Adam had another question.
Sure.
Adam asks a question, we're gonna answer them. So if anyone else got a question, make sure you put them in the chat. Jesse's helping to answer some of those, as well as we'll take them here on the show. He says, also, since this is the Techsmith session, what's one trick you think most people don't know about Camtasia or Snagit? If you don't have one, Betty, I don't want to put you on the spot because I told you we're not going to talk product, but if you had a tip, I mean, we've got tips.
I have one.
Yeah.
So I was not paid to say this. I love Camtasia. I think that was one of the first things I ever said to Matt after I stopped fangirling her. I was like, I love Camtasia. And he was like, oh, good. Did you know we have other products too? I was like, oh, yeah. Anyways, but love Camtasia. I use Camtasia to edit my podcast. I use Camtasia for all my video editing freelance. And what I recently learned, and actually, Matt, you gave me this tip, and so I'm going to give it back out, is the ripple delete. Oh,
yeah.
I cannot tell you how long I spent splitting here, clicking on it, hitting the delete button, pulling it together, and then stitching it like 17 steps. And all you got to do is drag, right click, ripple delete, and it cuts that piece out and stitches it with the other media. The first time I did it, I literally woohoo, and my kids come, what's going on? I'm like, I just figured this out. You don't know how much time this is going to save me. So ripple delete.
Yeah, and I'll give a Snagit one, and I don't know how much you're using Snagit, Betty, but I love, and it's a little bit obscure, but if you grab an image that's, something that's got text that's baked in, you couldn't copy and paste it. Snagit has an OCR feature, optical character recognition. You can grab the text, so you then can copy and paste it into other things. And get this, and this is one that sometimes doesn't work as well as others, but depending on the font, you can actually go in and change the text in that image. You can do a replace on
Stop it. That's not true.
That's true. It's true.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited. I'm going to try that today.
So grab text.
I've used Snagit for 15 years, maybe more. I didn't know that.
It's pretty cool. So thanks, Adam, for asking those questions. We always appreciate those. Those are fun to answer. Let's see if we got any other questions here. I think there was some clarification. I'm looking for clarification in the notes here. So I've done podcasts, videos, photography, and I think this is Michael again, and presentations on various software for the charity I work for. The video was mainly internal, so the target audience are already invested. Podcasts are public, no longer produced, but in the short-term time, there was some traction. Interesting, Betty, let's talk about that, because I think there's a difference between... what we're doing here is very public, right? We're creating stuff for public audience. Did media decisions change, like podcasts or choosing to do videos? Does that change for you when you're thinking external audience versus internal audience? Like if your corporation's going to do a podcast, or do you that's really hard to distribute?
It's actually not as hard as you would think. I think folks often think that, okay, well, if I'm doing a podcast, it has to be published publicly. It actually doesn't. What you can do, basically, a podcast is an audio file when it's all said and done. And highly recommend you use Camtasia or Audiate to do that. See what I did there? And anyways, so once you create your audio file, one tip that I like to give out is that you can upload it to YouTube as an unlisted item. So you might have to throw a picture in and make it an MP4. So maybe it's the cover of your podcast, and you can put it into YouTube. And as an unlisted item, that means no one in the public can find it unless they have the exact link. And then you can take that link and you can actually put it in your learning management system as an item, so that when they click on this, I'm going to complete this task or whatever it is, it will link out to YouTube. Now, your people have to have access to YouTube through your IT. So that is one gate, but that is one way to do that. And then the way that I did this at previous companies is post it out to YouTube as an unlisted, and then put it on our intranet, our internal intranet, so that anyone can access it there. So that's one way to do it. Another one is just to put it into a SharePoint file that all employees can access, and then publish that link that way as well. Is that helpful?
Yeah. No, that's awesome, because selfish shameless plug here is you could use screencast.com, you could use Nomia Pro. There's lots of, Techsmith has a few options that could help, but I love that you're thinking about like, okay, this doesn't have to be difficult. And even you make it a video file, but you post it someplace and then they're just going to listen audio only. I mean, Google has taken away Google Play, which is their music service, and turned it into YouTube Music, right? Like that, not that it's the exact same, but we see that that's not such an uncommon thing. And so I love that idea. And I know, we've talked a lot about podcasts, but I want to talk about images and video for a second, because that's what we're really about. I think one of the things that happens when people are creating learning development, it's really easy to get sucked into the stock image vortex of like, cheesy conference room, people shaking hands, person at, generic person at whiteboard writing formula that means nothing. We've all done it. Like we've all pulled from stock photos because it's like, oh gosh, I need something here. What advice would you give us about like, how do you get out of like just having, kind of bland imagery? What can you do to make your courses come a little bit more alive, or to use media that's going to make it feel not so stock and bland, if you will?
Yeah, I think in this area, a lot of times we feel like we've run out of ideas. You ever feel that way, Matt? Like you just run out, like I have no more ideas. So I have found a couple of things that help with that. One, I go into Canva. Are you familiar with Canva?
Oh yeah.
Love Canva. Love it. Not as much as I love Camtasia, but close. And I go into Canva and just look around, like search for the type of thing I'm trying to do and use that to generate new ideas. The thing I really like about Canva is that they have so many pre-made templates. When I say so many, I'm like thousands, tens of thousands of pre-made templates. And they're built based on what's popular in social media area, as far as what are the things that catches people's eye. And then also they're built on like what's popular business wise. So you can find both stuff that's like really out there and kind of wild, and then you can find stuff that's a little more formal and professional. So I use Canva a lot of times to generate or create new things and new ideas. I'm a big fan of, again, I'll say this, you just got to pay attention to what's going on around you. One of the things, I've told the story a few times, my daughter is a freshman in college, and about a year ago, she started getting all of the mail, like snail mail from colleges, trying to get her, hey, you should come to this college. Hey, you should come to this college. And at least once a week, I would bring in the mail and I would be like, hey, so-and-so sent you this flyer here, but you can't have it. And she would be like, why? I'm like, because I need it. It's a really good example of like, I could do something like this in learning. In fact, I took one, it was like this tablet sized document. And when you opened it up, it had like this journey. It was like a learning journey of getting onboarded to the college. And I was like, oh, and I took that back and I copied and steal everything. I cased it, right? I took something, a similar, I took that as my vision, and I created something for new hires that was similar to that, with a little road and like pit stops along the way. And all of that was influenced by snail mail that my kid got. So pay attention to those things, and the things that you like, you can duplicate, or you can, because I mean, you can make a version of it that fits what you need and still looks just as beautiful as what this one did.
Yeah. Well, I love that your answer to this is go look for inspiration. Go look at what other people are doing. And, I remember this because this was in a class I had a long time ago in college that we had to watch about the tech revolution of the 70s and 80s, rise of Apple. And Steve Jobs said, and he really stole it from Picasso, but, good artists copy, great artists steal, right? And
absolutely,
that has stayed with me all these years. Of all the things I've forgotten from my college education, that one has stuck with me because it's just what you said, right? Like you can find inspiration all around you for this. And I love that you're taking this from college admissions, like promotions, like Betty, you're a trainer stealing from marketing.
Absolutely. Every single time. And you should follow those folks out there that are so good at marketing. One guy I'm going to drop right now. I think his name is Chris Smith, but he has a marketing group called Seed to Branch. He posts some of the craziest cool marketing stuff that he sees or finds on the net, and it's so inspiring. Now, some of the things are kind of wild, like when it looks like there's a whale coming out of the building. I'm not going to be able to do that. But some of the things that he does, I'm like, you know what? We could do that. We could do something like that, and here's how it could apply. So that creativity, you get that going when you go out actually looking for those things.
Yeah, I love it. And this is where I think having a good system for keeping track of that stuff and a place to deposit, like, and this is, I feel bad talking about Snagit, but this is one of the reasons I use Snagit, as I grab those things, because I just I'm not going to remember that web page. I already have too many tabs open, so I just grab a capture of that, and then I got various note-taking tools that I can put that into. But to me, that's awesome, and I would say, we've talked about from an image standpoint, looking at the Canva templates and stuff like that. I do this with videos all the time.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of the things I'm doing when I'm on YouTube. Sometimes I'm just getting entertained, but I love watching these homegrown video creators who've really gotten good at production and how they're now all starting to teach. You look at, unless they're super mega stars on YouTube, right? What do? They create a YouTube channel, they get some moderate success, and then what do? They create a masterclass. They teach,
Yep.
And why they're not, maybe formally trained, it doesn't matter. They've got good ideas, and they look at their data way better than I think most people in training and development do, because they have instant access to data. YouTube tells you a lot about what your audience thinks about your video, whether you like it or not. It tells you that how much they watch, where did they stop watching, at what point in the video, so that's the other. I love this thread of you want to get better at images and video and whatever you're doing, go look at what the people that are doing it well are doing.
Mm-hmm. For sure. And pay attention to those things that you otherwise ignore and say, what could I do with that? Is there something I could do with that? Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw this little mini video clip as I was doom scrolling the other day, and it showed the top was the new adventures of the Adventures of Winnie the Pooh, and the bottom was the Jungle Book, and it went through multiple movies where Disney basically used the same sequence. So Christopher Robin is walking across the top, and then Mowgli is walking in Jungle Book, and it's literally the exact same sequence, different background, different character. And they did that several times early on when animation was hand drawn. Why can't we do that? Why? That's a great example of what it is that we want to do, because looking at them, they're just different enough that people wouldn't notice. And here's the thing: if they do notice, and it reminds them of something that they know and understand and like, that's all the better, right? It's all the better for you, because they're going to be much more interested in paying attention to that and doing something with that, because it looks like something they already know.
Yeah, I actually saw that same clip, and it was very impressive, the number of old classic movies that had reused basically the same concept and scenes. One it was interesting because it was in one thing it was throwing a character, but yet in another one it was throwing a book. So yeah, just that reuse. In fact, we had a great episode. We had Amy Woods on from Content 10X, and her company is all about repurposing content. And it's not quite the same, because it's not take this and then repurpose it for this other thing. But it's how do you take the one piece of content and turn it into many pieces of content?
Yes.
So that if you got a great training message, because we all know that learning doesn't stop or just all happen in the classroom or in the e-learning course, right? 6 months later, 3 months later, how much have you forgotten? And you need those probably snap, oh yeah, by the way, did you remember you're supposed to do X, Y, or Z? Are you still doing X, Y, and Z? So yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Great.
And
great
think about one more, I got one more thought. Yeah. Think about the brands that you follow and can recognize at a side glance, like a passing glance, you can recognize. So what's one that you can think of, Matt, that you could recognize at a passing glance?
Oh, anymore, it's probably Amazon or FedEx, because I can see them passing by on my window.
That's true. And also this little fruit flavored one
Apple?
Right here. Yeah. Or how about Starbucks, which, I mean, everyone seems, even if you don't go to Starbucks seems to recognize their logo or the color green. Have you ever been out somewhere and been like, I think that's like Starbucks green.
Mm-hmm.
So the same concepts around brand, those are the things that, if those things work well for them, those things will work well for you. So sort of looking at, okay, what do we want our message to be and how do we become on brand? And I know this could be a whole other conversation, but taking inspiration from those things. And I mean, okay, since we're talking about Starbucks, since I brought it up, you do realize that beautiful white cup that you love, that you are drawn to and compelled to, has a siren on it. That's not by accident.
It's not by accident. That's why I just don't drink coffee.
Well,
not getting sucked in. I got my own vices. That's.
Oh my gosh, I'm not getting sucked in. Oh, I wish I would have thought of that.
Well, Michael has a great comment here. He says, also finding inspiration from Google Trends, design, graphics, photography, movies, stories, etc. And I totally agree that there's inspiration is everywhere. There are design principles out there that can help us. This is all really, really great. Betty, this is fantastic stuff.
Yay.
So let's if any other questions come in, so if you got final questions, go ahead, shoot those over. This is your last chance. Betty, while we're waiting for any last questions, if any come in, I'm sure someone's listened to this and they said, this is fantastic stuff. They might want to go listen to more from you. Where can they find you?
Oh, so on LinkedIn, I'm under Betty Dannewitz, as you can see. Any other social media outlet, I am If You Ask Betty, all lowercase, all one word. So you can find me there. You can also find me at ifyouaskbetty.com, or you can take a listen to my podcast, which just dropped the 53rd episode, I think it was. And that's the If You Ask Betty podcast, which is anywhere that you listen to podcasts.
Awesome stuff. And what is episode 37 is with me?
Yeah, that one's really cool. It's with this guy named Matt Pierce, and then this other guy named Dan Hurt, who was literally, and he's going to be so excited that I said this on camera, but was fanboying both Matt and Dungeons and Dragons. And so I was like, bro, come on, just be on the podcast with me. And we had such a good time. And I think you should end the show with your Scottish accent. That one's my favorite.
In respect to Michael, who mentioned he's from Scotland, I will not embarrass myself, but I will say thank you, Betty. This has been fantastic. Michael does ask a question, though. He's saving me from embarrassment of having to do this. And he says, your favorite platform for education videos. So, Michael, and he says, I mean that you would release your work on. So is there a place where you put your education videos, Betty? Some place that you think is really good to release them?
YouTube. Yeah, YouTube is definitely my favorite. Although I still think you should have asked me that question in your accent, but it's fine. We're all disappointed, I guess, together.
We'll all get. I guess everyone will have to see. Everyone has to go listen to the episode. They want to hear me do a fake Scottish accent that's not that great. They can do that. Oh, Michael says he's Irish. Yeah. I'm totally good. So. But no, I think that's interesting. You said YouTube because we've been known to say around here that YouTube is the number 2 search engine by just volume, but I like to say it's the number 1 how-to engine, right? It is literally a place where education videos, such a big segment opportunity there if you're making your videos for public consumption. But there's a lot that goes into getting found. I think that's the biggest complaint about YouTube. It's like people are like, it's hard to get things found, but you need to know. It goes back to all those things we talked about at the beginning. The questions you ask: who's your audience? Why am I doing this? What am I trying to get them to go through? So, awesome stuff. Yep. All
Agreed.
Right.
Sorry, I was so pushy about the accent.
That's okay.
It was just really fun.
Maybe another time. We'll have to have Betty back sometime, and we'll make her do some accents too, or just go find somebody that really has a nice Irish or Scottish accent, and you'll be happier because mine's fake. It's a Michigan one. It's not great. Well, everyone, thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the Visual Lounge. Betty, thank you so much. Always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you for all you're doing to contribute to our industry, as well as just your great advice today. Really, really appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. All right, everybody. We're so glad that Betty could join us. She's just a delight. I love talking to Betty. It's just always a good time, and I never know quite where the conversation is going to go. and she's always going to ask me to do an accent for the rest of my life. But anyways, one of the things we like to do around here before we do close the show out is, of course, we just want to let you know about some things that are happening at Techsmith, because you know what? We've got great stuff. There's so many great people at Techsmith that are putting so much time and effort into creating content that is helpful and useful and valuable that we want to make sure it gets shared and you guys are aware of it. So let's do what's new at Techsmith. All right, here we are with our What's New at Techsmith segment. We're going to be talking about, of course, what's on the blog, because the blog is a major source of information. It's an easy way for us to multiple times a week publish great information. One of the things we got this week is an employee's training video, or how to create an employee training video. I'm going to make that a little bit bigger so you guys can see it a little bit better, which it's a beginner's guide. So if you're new to this process, you want to learn about training, we've got, look at this, all this fantastic information. We've got information about why training videos work really well. We've got information about when you're going to want to do informal versus formal training videos, and so much more. It just keeps going. There's so much here, even a little bit of information if you're using Camtasia to help you get started. Because here's the thing, if you're working with your employees and you need them to learn, there's a lot of great opportunities there that you can help them with. So definitely something you want to consider looking at. Yeah, just let me go back here. We'll look back at the blog. A couple other things. If you missed previous episodes of Visual Lounge, you can find them. Look at this. You can go to our video series, or you can go to, they moved it. There was a header here for the podcast. You can find the podcast, but oh well. You can find past episodes where we basically take our information from a previous episode and turn it into a blog post. You can watch the video, you can listen to the podcast right there, all said and done. So go check out the blog. It's techsmith.com/blog. Just search for Techsmith blog anywhere you find it. The other thing I'll say before we wrap up is I always like to mention, don't forget we have a free Techsmith Academy. So the Techsmith Academy is an online learning platform to help you learn skills to help you make videos or help you make images. So for instance, we've got a course up there about screen recording. It's 30 short videos between 1 to 3 minutes that are going to walk you through the process of screen recording. It is not about Camtasia though. It is really about the process of how are you going to make that screen recording and things that you need to think about along the way. We've also got courses about script writing, storyboarding, adding lights to your video, recording audio in whatever environment you're in. We even got one about creating job aids. So not video based at all. It's about creating job aids, and another one by Michelle Wiedemer that is really good about writing helpful help. So if you're not doing so much training, but you're looking to write actually help documentation, she provides a lot of great information, including about things like simplifying your images, how you can use Snagit to make great graphics that augment your help. Since we already talked about using media today. It's another great way to do it. So with that said, I want to thank everybody for tuning in. We hope that every single day you're taking time to level up your skills and get a little bit better. And until next week, we'll see you then.